And he swings, hits it high and deep and gone. Still going back. Oh! Out of here. Welcome to the big leagues.
Deep to center field, and it is gone.
Wow, his first big league swing is going to be a grand slam, a home run. Swing and drive. Mountain right. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Call Up, your go-to podcast on the future stars of Major League Baseball. It's Friday, August 11th. He's Jack McMullen. I'm RM Layton. And we're going to kind of just hit on some notable topics across the minor leagues. I think this is just a catch-up episode. We talked about doing this more often on Fridays. And I think after the Top 100 list comes out on Monday, a big announcement there, that will be out on Monday, August 14th. We'll do some mailbag questions on that and continue to break down some of the big movers in that list. But Jack, you and I have just kind of wanted to talk about so many different things that we figured, hey, why don't we kind of use this as just like a topical episode where we hit on all of the different developments as we get down to the final quarter or less of this minor league season.
Yeah, I'm strapping in. I've got my seatbelt on, and I'm ready to ride the roller coaster that is your prospect brain. I think it's, we should talk about this. Oh, wait, we should talk about this too. And then how about this? I'm ready to go with that. The ebbs and flows for 45 minutes to an hour.
Thank you for buckling up. I'm excited because there's a lot of things that I'm excited to pick your brain about, as well as some things that, I've been wanting to just kind of get into and discuss. A couple more like professional debuts and guys that I've been watching, that things I kind of wanted to talk about there. And then also you got an in-person look at Tyler Black yesterday that I wanted to kind of tee you up on the open. Brewers prospect who's, really talented with the bat, really quick. I don't think people realize how good of a base stealer he's become. Former compensation round pick. They're still trying to figure out a defensive home for him, but he's quickly climbed to AAA, even after missing time last year with a fractured scapula when they were trying him in center field. He hurt himself out there diving. They said, okay, no more of this. We'll put you at third. I think he can kind of be like a third/first baseman type. Maybe you could store him in left field. But you told me before we hit record that the Brewers prospect really impressed you with his athleticism. And this is a guy that's going to be on the Top 100 update.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a guy that is a combo of fast and strong that you just don't get from very many players in minor league baseball. And that's the thing, like every top 100 prospect is some combination of fast and strong, but there are guys that kind of buck that trend a little bit more so. And I think Black is a really good example of that. I'm trying to pluck other examples. I think Jackson Holliday is a really good example of that too, where Holliday is like bigger than you'd expect, but also so smooth and can move so well and can get momentum going, and the acceleration is crazy. We know Tyler Black had 47 bags, and he was a high efficiency base stealer too. I think it was 47 and 56 attempts in Biloxi. So this guy, like, I saw him swipe a bag and it was, okay, pristine jump, but the acceleration was like, how the hell does that come from your body, man? Like, you're too big to accelerate like that.
Yeah.
The swing is so easy. The setup is so simple. And he's patient, man. We know that. Like, that's well over 10%. The OBP was over 410 and double. If that guy can be patient, use his speed on the base paths, and he had 14 pumps in AA, like, this guy's a very unique hitter and absolutely a top 100 prospect.
19% chase rate. That was going to be the key thing that I hit on there. And then a guy that's just tapped into a little bit more power to the pull side, especially. Like, he's going to run into those balls pull side and then spray otherwise and use that speed. And I love that profile. Above average field to hit. He's a fun player. So I was glad you were able to get an in-person look at him and, kind of see what he's one of those players that I feel like you have to watch to really appreciate, because is corny and cliche. It's overused. Like, not everything that he does is always going to be seen in the stat sheet. And like yesterday, dude, he was in the second game of the doubleheader. Even in both games, he didn't have a hit yesterday. Technically speaking, he was 0 for 5 in that doubleheader with 3 walks, but he stole a bag. He scored, I think, 2 or 3 runs, and he made some good plays on defense and just put the ball in play and sprayed the ball. Like, you look at that in the stat sheet and you're like, well, what did he do? But he actually played very well.
So here's the thing, man. Like, And I think Carlos Correa did a great job of this. You remember when Correa was on last postseason? He was on TBS and he was explaining like what players are looking at now. And he said WRC plus and WOBA. And he was kind of explaining that. And one of the points that he really made with WRC plus was it really helps to walk. And when you go to an arbitration hearing, you can say, hey, my WRC plus was this. But the point he made was, okay, every player in baseball is going to go through an 0 for 10, 0 for 15 stretch, no matter how good you are. Like Ohtani is going through like 0 for 20 stretches at point. No, he's not going through 0 for 20, but like 0 for 10, 0 for 15. The thing that can spell that and can make it palatable is by walking.
Yep.
And like 0 for 5 is not a good day, but guess what? He got on base 3 times and he made shit happen. Like the guys that can make things happen during an 0 for 5 doubleheader, and you still have positive takeaways after an 0 for 5 doubleheader, those are the guys that I really latch onto.
No doubt about it. I totally agree. And it really helps just at the end of 162, you look back at the numbers, it helps those bottoms, kind of be, I guess, just filled in a little bit.
Yeah, like the valleys aren't as deep.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was looking for. Davis Schneider, he's in a peak right now. Blue Jays prospect who we've talked about on this podcast, who will be on the show next week. Very excited about that. He has an awesome story. I'm not going to spoil the whole story since we're literally going to have him on next week to talk about it, but a 28th round pick in 2017. If you listen to this podcast, since the beginning of this year, we talked about him. We talked about him as potential call up, just trying to find a spot for him at the time. And now through injuries and other things, the Jays have found a spot for him, and he's made the most of that situation already, which is so fun to see. But this is a guy that really tapped into, next level power this year. And I'm excited to just pick his brain on that, this coming week, because he saw a big jump in his batted ball data. And that's what really backs the 21 home runs that he hit this year in AAA and 2 more in the big league. So now he's got 23 homers in 93 games after, I think in 2022, what did he hit? 16. And before that, I don't think he'd even sniffed 16. You look at the batted ball data, though, 90th percentile exit velocity, jumping several ticks. He adjusted his timing mechanism and some of the moves in the box pre-swing. So there's a tangible adjustment to back this with Davis Schneider, as well as just more contact. Yeah, so 2022, 90th percentile exit velocity of 102. 2023, 90th percentile exit velocity of 104.5, while his contact rates have improved and his chase rate has dropped. He's adjusted his moves in the box a little bit with his timing mechanism, and you got the data to back it up, and you've got the surface level stats to back it up. But this dude in 6 big league games thus far, Jack, 9 hits, a pair of homers, and he's driven in, where are we at here? He's driven in 5 in those 6 games. He's accumulated an 0.6 F4 in 6 games. It's just been so fun to see. Guy that takes his free passes too, by the way. What a nice little shot of life for this Blue Jays team. And also just what a cool story as a guy that's grinded his way through the minor leagues.
Well, it's really funny, like where baseball is. I think that's very indicative. Like you had all of these advanced numbers and you couldn't find RBIs. Like, welcome to baseball in 2023.
Yep.
Shit. Yeah, man, like he was a Bluefield Blue Jay, I want to say. I think they were the Bluefield Blue Jays, maybe the Bluefield Rams, or that's the college team. Let's see what they are. Bluefield Blue Jays. That's right. Okay, so he was at the complex when he was a late round pick. I think it was like 28th round at a high school in New Jersey in 2017. 50 games at the complex in 2017 after the draft. 44 games in the Appy League in 2018. 2019, 34 games in the Appy League, 17 games in short season A ball in Vancouver. Then COVID hits. Then he comes back 3 games in low A, then 46 games in high A. I think it was injury hampered in 21. 2022, high A, double, triple. This year, triple, 21 pumps, and he gets to the big leagues. If that's not climbing, I don't know what looks like climbing.
And that's a guy that, probably kind of got hit with the Ord guy label. It's usually what you're drafting. In the 28th round, you're drafting Ord guys. And he fully ripped it off. He said, you're not putting this label on me. I'm just going to outperform what any Ord guy is going to do. And to get into those specific adjustments that he's made, it's funny. Usually you think leg kick, more power. He was a leg kick guy before, and then he adjusted to a toe tap. But with this toe tap, his weight's already stacked in his backside. So he used to be upright, leg kick gets me into my backside, but you got to consistently make that move happen and make sure you're getting into your backside. Now he starts stacked on the backside. I can't wait to ask him about this. And then toe taps to get even deeper in there and stay there. And he's staying there longer. So now his timing's better. He sees the ball earlier and his lower half's more consistently involved. And now you're seeing the results from a data perspective. Really fun story. And again, we'll save more for when we get to talk to him, this coming week. But I can just tell you from brief conversation I've had with him before we're going to have him on is that he definitely was in disbelief that this was happening. And that there's nothing cooler than that of when, something happens that you can't even believe in yourself at that point. Like, I don't think anybody ever had Davis Schneider tabbed as big leaguer when he was drafted in the 28th round. And at times, maybe you even doubt it yourself. And here he is, not only being a big leaguer, but making a big league impact for a contending team that is loaded with stars. Awesome story that we're just going to scrape the surface of today. A lot more coming soon.
Do you know how I know that guy is going to be a good interview? I mean, come on. Like, that's one of the stronger mustache. Yeah, that's a crazy strong mustache. The mustache and the rec specs, like the sport goggles. Dude, this guy's going to be a great conversation. I know that already.
I love it. Another topic I want to get to, which is just a total shift in another direction here. I don't like putting advanced college hitters in low A. And I want to get into this for a second. So I've watched now Dylan Cruz strike out several times on pitches that are simply not strikes and not necessarily close. I have a tweet with two of the videos there. He struck out 2 more times yesterday. One of them was his fault. He swung at a pitch that was at his eyeballs. But that might be a byproduct of literally the at-bat before getting called out on a strike that was 2 balls outside. I'm not making excuses for this guy because he's still hitting well and he's going to be a very good baseball player. And I don't need to prove Dylan Cruz to anybody. It's not like I have to make excuses for him. I can say with a fair level of confidence that half of his strikeouts were not strikes. Why put a college hitter who's renowned for his eye, and they were talking about in College World Series all the time, oh my gosh, he has like 20/10 vision and like he is the best vision of anybody ever. Like, it was almost like weird how much they were talking about his vision. But you have Wyatt Langford in high A, you have Matt Shaw in high A, you have most of these other college guys that are advanced in high A. And then you have the most advanced guy in low A, where, let's be real, Jack, he has a better eye than the umpires there. And I just don't think this is good for his development. It might be a moot point. He might be up by Tuesday. But I just think it's silly that he's in Fredericksburg right now.
I don't like the station to station. I'm with you, because this guy, like, think about his teammate. And obviously pitchers and hitters are so ridiculously different. But Skeens just threw 11 pitches at the complex. Where's the next inning he throws? Might be double.
Yeah.
There's no point in sending him to Greensboro. There's no point in sending him to Bradenton at the low A level. Like, why hitters do that, I'm not sure. And I remember we had this conversation about JJ Bleday in 19, I want to say, where Bleday like just got immediately assigned to high A.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, that's unique. That's lofty. The thing that has changed, I think, for the better is the best college hitters in America are just going to go to high A. Because the
college pitching now. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's just better than low A pitching. And low A pitching, like, while you may see more 96s in low A, actually, I don't know if you're playing
in the SEC. Yeah.
In the SEC, you may see more 96s than you do in low A, but you for sure see better command around the zone. You don't see as many non-competitive pitches as you do in low A. Dude, I'm seeing non-competitive pitches out the ass in triple A.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I thought Cruz was double A ready as soon as he was drafted. I'm not sure why he's got 5 games in low A. What they may be doing is sending him on the the ballpark tour. Hey, go see Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
So they could do or week in low A, week in high A, and then finish the year in double. I think that's silly, but yeah, man, like, I don't know. I can't fault these organizations. It's also just coming from like an affiliate perspective. It's huge for these affiliates to get these guys.
That's the thing. And Fredericksburg's like on the scale of lower levels is a pretty popular spot, right?
I think so. It's new. They've got a new ballpark. I think they just kind of want to flaunt it a little bit, and they've got it.
I get that. I get that. But and there's just a level of, I really do think if you have a polished hitter at the low A specifically, because I think there's a big difference from low A to high A in the strike zones. And I've talked to guys about that. Like, they feel like low A is basically high school level with the umpires. I think it is a lot of like high school umpires mixed in there from time to time. Roman Anthony's another perfect example of this. And I know he's punching out in high A, but Roman Anthony is a very patient hitter in the Red Sox organization, sub 20% chase rate. And I think those kind of guys actually are put at a disadvantage in low A. And what did Roman Anthony do in low A? He hit 228, 376, 316. Then he gets to high A. He's hitting 292, 432, 646. He's walking more. And yes, he's striking out more, but I think it's because he's getting into deep counts and he's learning, and he just turned 19. But I do think that it is just, for certain guys, for patient hitters, it works against them in some ways and can kind of get them out of what's a strength for them, which is a good feel for the strike zone. I don't think that Dylan Cruz is going to change, because I told you on the last episode, I watched a lot of Dylan Cruz's collegiate Ks, which wasn't many. And there were so many pitches where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not even close. But there's a couple in the last few games with Cruz where I'm just like, this is just counterproductive for him. So I just wanted to talk about that, because Cruz kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of other guys with low chase rates that have actually had worse numbers in low A, because their eye actually works against them. So I thought that was interesting. And you're also seeing most of these college guys, which is the other thing I wanted to mention. These college guys are balling out in high A so far.
Yeah.
Shaw, 3 hits yesterday. Matt Shaw with the Cubs. Triple, homer. Braden Taylor homered yesterday with the Rays. Wyatt Langford, another great game in the Rangers system yesterday. He picked up a double and a walk. The day before that, 3 hits with a double and a homer. He's in high A. This is going to be a really good college crop, man. I really feel it. I don't want to get too reactionary, but we knew that this was a hitting heavy draft. And I love so many of these hitters, man.
Yeah, well, and I think we knew that too. I think we were really excited for this year's draft. And, hey, next year might be a dud. Year after that might be a dud. I'm not sure. But, Tommy White is a top 10 pick next year. He's probably a top 5 pick. I like Cruz and Langford and all these guys way more than Tommy White.
I might even like Matt Shaw more than Tommy White.
That's the thing, man. So like next year could be a quote unquote dud of a draft, but this year we cannot kick a gift horse in the mouth. I think it was 2017, that NBA draft that, I think people looked at and it's like, oh, this isn't as good as 2016. But then like you see the talent that comes off the board and it's like, okay, yeah, like this class is really good. And I think that's what we should be doing here. We shouldn't be taking this class for granted. And, I think that Langford and Cruz are going to have a big competition throughout their entire career. Like, hey, Cruz went before me. I thought I was better than him. I think Walker Jenkins and Max Clark are going to have a big competition throughout their entire career. I think Skeens and Lauder are going to compete throughout their entire career. I think Dolander is going to have a chip on his shoulder trying to prove that he was the guy. I think that there is so much talent that came off the board in the top 20, top 30 picks. Even a guy like Arjun Nimala, who I really like pre-draft, and I know you've seen some more swings and you're starting to really like too. I think this class is loaded with great talent.
I'm with you 100%. And I do think that it's the affiliate type thing, sell it out with Dylan Cruz here. Because again, you look at some of the other guys in high A, they know that he's ready for high A. I really think by Tuesday he's in high A.
And that's the thing, man. Like, from the baseball perspective, from the baseball mind perspective, we never really want to acknowledge that it could be as simple as that. But I'm telling you, from a minor league perspective, it could be as simple as that.
That's a game changer for them, man. That's a
total game changer. If he's there for a homestand, you sell way more tickets.
And what's 5-6 games for him in the grand scheme of things. So I get it. I get it. But yeah, I'm excited to look back at this college class. Even at some point next year and see how all these guys are doing. Braden Taylor's swing, man, looks really darn good. Let's go on the other side of things, though. We talk about not being aggressive enough with promotions. This is something that I don't want to cast too much blame, but this is something that I was really eager to talk to you about. And I don't want to jump to conclusions, but aggressive promotions of AJ Smith-Shawver of the Braves have him in flux here, kind of. Not in flux like I don't like anything has changed in terms of his outlook, but what kind of got me going on this was I'm trying to rank this dude in our top 100 update because he technically is not graduated yet. And Smith-Shawver started the year in high A. Several months ago, he was in high A and dominating. And if he just went up to double A and dominated there and was still there right now, he's probably a top 5 pitching prospect in baseball, right? He's 20 years old. They bump him up to triple A and he looks really solid there. At that point, he's a top 3 pitching prospect in baseball. But then they bring him up to the big leagues after 2 AAA starts. I think it was 2 innings out of the pen, looks really good. 5 1/3 against the Nationals where he holds his own. And then we see him start to run into a bit more trouble. Okay outing against the Rockies. Not a great outing against the Reds. Then they send him back to triple. And then in St. Paul, which we were just talking about, like is weirdly a launch pad. St. Paul, he gets shelled in 3 1/3. Then Memphis, kind of a meh start. Really good start against Norfolk. Hey, you're back up to the big leagues now, and you got to pitch against the Brewers. Yeah. Pretty solid start there. Then back down to Charlotte, where 6 innings, 3 runs, 7 Ks. It's breaking my brain on how to assess him as a prospect, but as we just kind of flew through that, it makes me want to shove him up even higher. And I feel like the Braves, I'm sure he's not complaining because he's getting big league time, so it's not a problem. But this just feels like they're tossing him out around like a freaking rag doll, man.
Yes. So Charlotte is a launch pad as well. So Charlotte, he did allow a homer. It was 5 hits, 3 earned in 6 innings. So it's still a quality start, although that's, the loosest version of a quality start you can possibly get. He started in Milwaukee, or he started against Milwaukee, at home. But then, like Memphis, that's a home run friendly ballpark. St. Paul, home run friendly ballpark. I don't want to look at it ballpark by ballpark because I agree with you. Like it's kind of weird how they're throwing him around. But what I will say is, I remember the conversation that we had with Tucker Davidson when he was with Atlanta on the Just Baseball show. And Tucker Davidson did not have the prospect intrigue that Smith-Shawver has, but he was a tweener. He was the guy that would come up for spot starts. And he said it's so easy to buy in when this team is winning and has like legitimate World Series aspirations. Yes. So I will say that AJ's probably not looking at a call up like, oh, they just need me as a warm body. It's, oh, they need me to go win this game for them because they're the best team in baseball. I think there's a different temperature that surrounds this when you are the best team in baseball and you've got Fried on the shelf until this point, and you've got Kyle Wright on the shelf until this point, and you've got inconsistency from Strider and Bryce Elder after the break. So
that's a good point.
I think that this is a situational anomaly for AJ Smith-Shawver. But for a 20-year-old that was an Augusta Green Jacket last year, like also best name in minor league baseball. I think I've settled on that. The Augusta Green Jackets in Augusta, Georgia. That's so good. Yeah. But man, for a guy that was in low A last year and like, frankly, not that great in low A, it was mid 4s.
Yeah.
I mean, this has to be imposter syndrome 101, but also like, I fucking deserve this. Let's go. I'm 20 years old. I should be in the big leagues.
It's funny because you mentioned Tucker Davidson, and I was kind of thinking about some of the conversations we've had with Walker Buehler on the Just Baseball show, where it was like he was in this position of, the Dodgers are trying to win right now, and he was trying to make an impact. He doesn't love coming out of the bullpen
because Buehler was a top 30, top 20 prospect in baseball when this was happening.
So I think it's a similar situation where it's like, okay, the Braves are bordering on dynasty. This group, I think, has a chance that when we look back is going to be a dynasty. And depending on how they do this year, if they can win a World Series here, they're I think fully in the dynasty conversation. When you have a dynasty, you kind of throw some of that stuff to the wayside, to your point. And I guess this is one of those things where it's like, we're not going to, baby him and put the gloves on and just kind of, make sure that everything is perfect for AJ Smith-Shawver, because our rotation is decimated. The guys in front of him didn't hold up their end of the bargain in Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd. So we got to try something here. And I get it from that lens, because it's championship or bust for the Braves every single year. And again, AJ Smith-Shawver's clock is starting, and I don't think he's upset about that. What's interesting is, now let's be selfish about this. How do you rank this dude? Because this is one of the biggest sticking points for me in the top 100. If he was striking out nearly 15 per 9 through his 3 starts in high A, then he gets up to double A, and we only saw 7 innings in double A, but he punched out 9, walked 3. Then he gets to triple A, and the walks start to tick up a little bit as the zone gets really tight. But again, this guy had to adjust on the fly to multiple levels. He didn't even really get to adjust to double A. Also threw with a tacked ball for 7 innings, then went back to a big league ball, which is bizarre. 16 walks in those 30 innings. I think that was more nibbling and adjusting to a baseball again after he technically used 3 baseballs in a span of like a couple weeks. Yeah. And in the big league level, not the whiff numbers you'd expect and slightly elevated walk, but he shouldn't be in the big leagues, technically speaking. How do you rank this dude? Because if he's shoving in high A and double A, we're putting him in the Cade Horton spot. But now we're not seeing him ranked in that spot. And I think it's weird, because it's like, I think a lot of prospect lists and maybe some evaluators are pitting his ability to survive at the big leagues against him because he's just surviving.
No, Cade Horton's not surviving at the big league level right now, I don't think.
No.
I mean, Painter isn't throwing at the big league level because he's not available. Mizorowski, I don't think is surviving at the big league level right now.
No.
So the way that I would advise you to look at it is throw the big picture stuff away as much as you can and look at each pitch in a vacuum.
Yep.
Okay. How much do you like his fastball? His fastball, is it better than Horton's? Is it better than Mizorowski's? Look at his slider. Is his slider better than Horton's? Is his slider better than Mizorowski's? Like, I would almost view it as a pitch by pitch and see where he wins in each pitch.
Yeah. And that's a great point, and something that I was trying to do a little bit of, but then it kind of always comes back to this. Okay. 66% strike rate on the season on his fastball. All of the secondaries are around 55% strike rate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because of secondary command? Is that because he's nibbling? Is that because he's trying to throw? Remember, strike rate is slightly, I think it's almost skewed to a degree, because his strike rate, or I guess the zone that he's trying to throw within, is tighter than the zone that his peers that are going to be ranked here are trying to throw within. So some of the breaking balls that are a ball out that never get called a strike in the big leagues, because these umpires are incredible, no matter how much people want to, talk crap about them. I mean, they miss 1 or 2 a game for the most part. In double A, you're getting consistently a ball or 2 balls off. So it makes it hard.
Now, let me say this. I know that there is a big league starter that has pretty much split his time evenly between AAA and the big league so far this year, whose strike rate is up over 10% in the big league compared to AAA. I think it's 13% is the exact number, because of the automatic ball strike system. Like, there's no malleability there. So it's easier to get a called strike in the big leagues than it is in AAA this year.
Interesting.
So that's another thing. You got to look at AAA arms like that.
It's so layered. But I think the genesis of it is that Smith-Shawver's probably, if you look at the industry rankings, like, I'm not sure where Pipeline has him or BA has him in the latest update. I don't know if you can pull up like where. Yeah, I think I can try to pull up Baseball America in the meantime, because I know they just updated theirs, and of course they always do a great job. And
on the new top 100, Smith-Shawver's 58.
Yeah, I
think that's low.
I think he'd be higher.
I think
he'd be higher if he never got called up, and I think that's a crazy statement. Like, that's a wild thing to say. 46 for Baseball America.
Yeah.
Here's my question. Jackson Jobe or AJ Smith-Shawver?
I have no problem being the high guy on Smith-Shawver.
Yeah. right? And I love Job. And again, check out that interview that we just did with him. He was awesome, by the way. So insightful for a 21-year-old high school righty who started pitching his senior year. That was one of my favorite interviews we've had in some time, and the live breakdown to check out on our YouTube, where he broke down his recent dominant high A start. That was awesome stuff from him. I'm a Jackson Job fan, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think he's AJ Smith-Shawver's younger, and Job's just getting his feet wet in high A. It's really wild how you can like kind of compare across and see all these different types of situations here, and then you got to try to rank these guys against each other, and it's kind of wild. Staying on the topic, because you brought this up on a follow-up when I was texting you last night.
Wait, I've got one quick big league question for you here before we moved off the Braves. You said they're approaching dynasty type.
Yeah.
2021 and 2023. If they do win the World Series in 2023, how many of these names how many of like the big boppers and the big names on the 2023 Atlanta Braves played a big part in the 2021 World Series? I'm thinking about the lasting impression that these players will have in the history of baseball if the Braves do turn into a dynasty. You say Acuna, but Acuna was a non-factor.
He was hurt.
He wasn't on the field. So Sean Murphy, not on the team. Matt Olson, not on the team. Albies, yes. Orlando Arcia, not on the team. Austin Riley, yes. Rosario, Eddie Rosario is not going to be a big name here. Michael Harris,
back.
Acuna, non-factor. And then you go to the rotation. Strider, not on the team. Elder, not on the team. Charlie Morton and Max Fried.
But Morton's leg was broken.
But he did throw a couple innings on that broken leg.
Yeah, but like he didn't really, he got them to the World Series, but yeah.
So that's the thing. The lasting names from these World Series wins are Fried, Riley, and Ozzie Albies.
That's what's scary, dude, is it like you could make the case that the dynasty's just starting.
And I know. And I think that Strider and Harris are going to be huge names in that moving forward.
So actually, let's stick on the Braves point then. Do you think they adversely affected Vaughn Grissom?
Yes.
You think so?
Grissom off the dome is like an 850 OPS in triple right now. He's hammering triple A.
He's up to 890 now.
This guy's like a big league shortstop for 20 other teams, I think.
Yeah, and even if he can't play great defensively there, okay, let's see him at third. Let's see him at second. Like, this guy's
there's no space, man. Like, that's the thing. I think if they truly felt like Vaughn Grissom was the guy, they would have been more patient with him. But I think it was a 2-year, $9 million deal for Arcia. They knew they had something in Orlando Arcia.
100% they saw something there. And I think he learned with Ron really quickly, and his defense got impactful. It was like they were fighting for Vaughn Grissom to be a passable defender. They were fighting for Arcia to become a plus defender. And I think that's a big difference there. And that's what they need. You look at that lineup, they don't need offense. Arcia's swinging it regardless, but they didn't need offense. But one of my biggest misses going into this year was that I felt like Vaughn Grissom could play good enough defense there, but maybe he can't. Maybe it was more about Arcia being a better defender. My question is, did they rush him, or is he kind of in a separate conversation here? Because you look at what he did for them at the big league level. I know he hit a wall at the end of the year, but he played a big part in helping them get to where they got. 41 games, 121 WRC plus, not great defense. But again, he worked hard on it. It got better. He hasn't gotten a fair shot at all this year because Arcia, kind of took that from him, and that's the nature of the business. But he's lighting up AAA now, and what else? What do you do with him moving forward? I don't know if they adversely affected him, but he's definitely stuck.
Yeah, I think you trade him in the offseason. I don't know. He's really young. He's 21 years old in triple right now. Could have an 890 22. Okay, if Arcia is, last year of his mini extension next year. So say Arcia has one more year. If he gets hurt, Vaughn Grissom is there. If not, Grissom's your guy in 2025. And hey, that would line up perfectly if you didn't rush Grissom to the big leagues last year, and he was really good last year. So yeah, I think they threw off the narrative with Vaughn Grissom last year. But it's going to sound like I'm regurgitating this take from Smith-Shawver, but it was so situational for one of the best teams in baseball last year to get Grissom up. Smith-Shawver, the only reason he debuted this year is because Fried and Wright were hurt and Schuster and Dodd didn't work out. That's why AJ's in the big leagues.
100%.
Last year, Grissom isn't sniffing the big leagues. He probably isn't even sniffing AAA if Ozzie Albies doesn't break his foot.
I mean, he skipped triple and also like barely played in double.
2 weeks in double, maybe a week in double. Like, that's the thing. Vaughn Grissom is not in the position he's in right now. Like, oh, he's blocked. He's just a really good prospect if Albies doesn't break his foot in 2022. Yeah. That's the nature of the beast with the best teams in baseball.
This is another frustrating one because he's probably on this normal track and, you know, in one of those situations where you're watching him just rake through AA. He probably would have put up nuclear numbers there. He had a 147 WRC plus in 22 games there.
He's a top 20 prospect in baseball right now if he doesn't debut last year.
That's the crazy thing. And we were talking about this on the Just Baseball show. There's a level of like, it would be cool to see rankings of just talent under 25 because people always say, oh, well, the Braves farm system isn't good. Yeah, it's not great, but you add Vaughn Grissom to the farm system and now it looks a little bit better. You start to value some of the guys that are underrated in that system. It looks a little bit better. It's like there's teams that don't have great farm systems, but they have good talent under 25. And I think that's a side of it that's really interesting. But yeah, the narrative on Vaughn Grissom has been, you know, negatively impacted because, you know, he got up to the big leagues and then now is back down in triple. And in our minds, we almost like, oh, he was up in the big leagues and didn't stay. We're knocking him a couple points, I feel like, even though the fact that he even survived up there is a testament to how damn good he is. So for me, Grissom, I still think he's going to be a really good big leaguer, and he's almost become forgotten because of being up there and then sent back down. Does he do it at shortstop? I don't know. I got to do an updated video dive on that. I obviously was overly bullish on the defense, but I don't see why he can't continue to learn and hold it down long term. He's 22 and was just turned 22 at the start of the year. One other guy I want to talk to you about kind of his development and the uniqueness of like the back and forth is Taj Bradley. Mm-hmm. There's some concern about his health. I thought he looked really good last night. So I think he kind of put that to bed because his velocity was down slightly and he had just a short start in Nashville on the 4th. But then yesterday, 5 2/3 against Memphis, 3 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 8 Ks. It was a rough stretch for Bradley for a little bit where it was a lot of short starts, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 runs. And, they had to just kind of keep rolling him out there because the Rays are as decimated as any team we've seen in the pitching department, unfortunately.
Yeah.
22 years old still. And another guy that, he's flown through the minors very quickly. It's a little bit of a different situation because you can make the case that he definitely was big league ready. We were pounding the tables for him to get called up earlier. But I'd almost wish he was in a situation where he could have just been out there and struggled and worked through it. But again, this is a team that was one of the best. It was the best team in the American League through the first half and it was fizzled out a little bit, but is still, focused on contending. Where are you at on Taj Bradley at this point? Is your outlook changed at all? Because this is another guy that just turned 22. Oh no, he didn't succeed, in flying colors at the big league level. But I also think some of his big league challenges are challenges that aren't necessarily going to go away anytime soon. So I think this is a unique spot.
Yeah, it's a very unique spot. What I will say is this guy has proven that his fastball, when at its best, can get guys out and can get whiffs at will. And I think that's why I still hold on to a lot of hope. And I loved Taj Bradley coming into this year because that fastball is that FU fastball. It's an electric fastball that stays up. I'm going to point to usage, as simple as that is. I wish he threw his curveball more, man. Like, this guy is throwing, I think right now, 45% four-seamer. He's throwing about 30% cut fastball at 89. And opponents are hitting 320 against his cut fastball.
Yeah,
against his curveball that he's throwing 17% of the time, opponents are hitting $160. If he can find that fastball curveball changeup mix as opposed to fastball cutter and the mix in curveball and change, I think this guy's outlook changes overnight.
Yeah, and he just doesn't have confidence in that curveball. And that's that cutter slider. It's kind of like that tweener shape. So depending on what tracks it, it'll be labeled differently.
And it's frankly not good enough right now.
Yeah, and it really works off the fastball. And it's interesting too. I'm looking at a guy that's fastball dependent of course, but there's a lot of guys that have success that are fastball dependent, who's even in the big league ebbs and flows struck out 12 per 9. But here's the thing. He's also way above any usage, really. I guess he's right on par with last year, where they had to slow him down, where last year he threw 32 innings. And so this year he's bordering on that, but these are, I think, have been a lot more high stress innings at the big league level. Yeah, I do wonder how much they can stretch him out now this year too, because if his fastball is slightly diminished, he's really not going to succeed. And, we saw in spots when the velo was down, he got crushed. And then when the velo is back up, he pitches really well. The problem too is fastball cutter or slider. It's a cutterish slider.
Yeah.
You're looking hard and harder. And that's why he's giving up so many home runs. He went through a span where he gave up in 8 starts, 12 homers. And that's going to be the trouble. So yeah, I agree. He's got to find that curveball. But here's my question for you. Do you send him to triple and have him work on that curveball? Or do the fight or flight Rays just have him try to survive up at the big leagues? Like, talk about impacting a guy's development. I can promise you, dude, if he's at the big leagues, he ain't working on that curveball. He's trying to dominate with the fastball and make that slider, that short cutterish slider, work, because it's worked in the minors and it's been a good pitch. Yeah. That's what he's doing. So where are you at there?
So I'm actually on the latter, and I never side on that side. I'm never on that side. I'm always like, hey, go figure shit out. But with the Rays situation, with how unique it is, where like McClanahan might be looking at a second TJ now. I mean, they are grasping at straws for the rest of the year. Zach Eflin is so important. Savali is so important, but you need 2 more starters. And like, they can only go with the opener every now and again, man. If they were running out 3 openers out of 5 rotation spots, I feel terrible about that. So terrible about it. They traded Evan McKendry at the deadline. I don't think they should have done that.
Which is so weird for a catcher.
For Alex Jackson.
You just saw McKendry yesterday, by the way.
I really like him.
He's crafty.
Yeah, like he's not going to be a big league 3, but that guy can go make spot starts for the Tampa Bay Rays when they have no other starters.
They need spot starts. I was shocked by that move.
Yeah, I don't think Taj goes down, especially with where his innings are right now. You started to make that point. He threw 133 innings last year. I think he's got about 10 more starts left in the tank, and that takes you through the end of the season and into the postseason easily. He's at just under 100 innings right now. I feel good upping his inning total by 20 this year. So going from 133 to 153, that gives you 53 innings to play with now. And 53 innings will get you through the first week in November if they're lucky enough to do that.
Got you. And just to make this the craziest episode that we've done in a while, I'm going to pivot to Jung-Hoo Lee.
Perfect. I'm in.
And this is what we'll wrap up with here. And we're definitely going to need timestamps for this episode. So let's hammer those out together after this episode. Jung-Hoo Lee, KBO star, and I know you love Jung-Hoo Lee. This is an interesting spot, and I wanted to talk about him because I want to talk about the international prospects a lot more on this podcast, because 1, you're seeing them continue to make more of an impact at the big league level, and 2, this free agent class coming up is like not great from a big league perspective, but you've got Yamamoto coming over. You've got some other guys that could potentially be posted that are interesting. And Lee is a fun spot because I kind of want to ask you, like, KBO is a little bit different in terms of the level of competition. It's not going to be the same as the NPB. I like, would you say KBO is closer to high A, NPB is closer to double? Like, that's the rough rule of thumb. But I think there's spots in the NPB where it's closer to triple.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably fair. The KBO is like certainly a step lower on the ladder than the NPB, but it is the 3rd best, highest level league in the world.
And I think Ha-Seong Kim and what he's doing, he had the acclimation process, but what he's doing is definitely going to, I think, encourage teams to go make some moves and potentially go after somebody like Jung-Hoo Lee. He had ankle surgery, and I think he still plans to be posted. And I think John Morosi said that he still plans to sign with a major league team this winter.
Yeah.
How much do we look at the numbers versus just like the scouting reports on guys like this? Because again, Lee was hurt this year. So 85 games, only 6 pumps, 863 OPS. But in 2022, 349, 421, 575 slash line. That's a 996 OPS. He had 23 home runs.
Yeah.
That's, I think, better than anything. I'm going to pull it up. I think that's better than anything Ha-Seong Kim did at that level. Are you signing a guy like this to instantly plug him into the big leagues? Or, are you willing to be patient with guys like this? Like, I'm just interested in the approach. With the NPB guys, I have far more confidence because they're doing it at a higher level and you have a little bit more access too. I'm just trying to figure out where he stacks up because this is a light free agent class. And this is a guy that I think teams are going to get more eager on. You're seeing Yoshida do what he's doing out of the NPB. You're seeing a lot of these guys start to make smoother transitions. Kodai Senga throwing really well. Like there was a history where there was a negative connotation with these players overseas because a lot of them would come over and just not look great. We didn't have as much data. We didn't have as much info. We didn't have probably even access to as much video. It was probably harder to even get over there and see them. It's different now. How much more confidence do you have in these players overseas?
A lot more. Honestly, a lot more. And I think Kim is the best example. I was trying to go back deep to Shin-Soo Choo, but that's kind of weird because he came over stateside so young. So let's go to Ha-Seong Kim right now. And, Ha-Seong Kim is last year in the KBO. Kim hit 306, 397, 524, 921 OPS. He had 30 pumps. He was 23 for 25 in the stolen base department. He comes over as a 622 OPS, then a 708, now an 835. So there is an exclamation process. But what you got from Ha-Seong Kim immediately was Gold Glove caliber defense and a 620 OPS. That's a Major League Baseball player, and that's a big league regular. I know the OPS is 100 points below average, but like when you're getting that defense, you pallet that. The scouting reports on Lee say really good defender. And I think Lee, what you're finding out now, yes, better numbers. He's hitting 319 this year in 85 games. That's the lowest clip of his life in the KBO. And he debuted at 18 years old back in 2017 in the KBO. So, man, like this guy is pretty much flawless when it comes to approach. This year, missing time with an ankle issue, 13% walk rate, 6% K rate. 85 games, he struck out 23 times.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about lack of impact. And when these guys come over from the KBO or the MPB, they are immediate big leaguers. I think this guy, when he comes over at 25 years old, knowing that you're dreaming on more offensive output than Ha-Seong Kim and good defense in a corner, is probably a 5-year, 20 AAV guy.
Wow. So you think he can get like $100 million?
I think he can get $100 million, especially with where the market's at right now in a very thin system or in a very thin
Kim
market.
Got 4 years, 28.
He got 4 for 28.
Yeah. I'm telling you, the KBO guys get way less. Isn't that crazy how much less the KBO guys get?
How much do you think Yamamoto is going to get?
Gross. Like, I think he gets the 5 years, like something more than Senga potentially. So that's the interesting thing. And I, to your point, though, would rather take a chance on these guys at 4 years, 28, when I'm a small market team. This is what I wanted to wrap up with. Would you rather sign I don't even know who a free agent would be this year, but let's say like a Michael Conforto or a Jung-Hoo Lee and take the chance?
I'd rather sign Lee.
I think that's fun. And is Jung-Hoo Lee's instantly a top 100 prospect, right? If we're ranking those guys.
Instantly.
Yeah. He's instantly a top 30, 40. Like I have to do so much more research on the international guys and I want to do more coverage of this. So this was kind of our foray into it. So like excuse some of our, some of our ignorance maybe to some of the aspects of it. Cause I know some listeners are very into it. And that's why I want to get deeper into, how these players come over. I just look at the swings. And by the way, like Jung-Hoo Lee, I love his setup because he starts super stacked on the backside. He has one of these unique timing mechanisms where he starts a gather, which like instead of it being one load, he starts open, and as the pitcher starts his, comes set and or starts his windup, he brings his foot over, and it's almost close to his back foot. So his weight's totally stored backwards, and then he explodes on the baseball. That's risky if you have a forward move, but he doesn't have a crazy forward move. That's something to monitor. But like if he stays back, and that's a really fun swing that'll work, and he seems to swing off the back leg pretty well, this guy's going to make a lot of contact. If he makes a lot of contact, he plays good defense. Like, I'll give him the Ha-Sung Kim deal any day of the week. And to the point of what you were saying, like, you see a guy that could be worth $100 million. I don't disagree. Why don't more teams, small market teams, take flyers on these types of guys? Yes, it might not work out. Gene Segura didn't work out for the Marlins. Yeah. They owe him $9 million next year. Like, why not take a chance on this guy rather than the journeyman big leaguer? Because the floor is slightly higher. Like, I'd rather shoot for the stars if I'm a small market team.
Kim came over at 25 years old. Oh, like, I guess he's not an $100 million guy because of the league he's coming from.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's that different from the KBO.
That's so weird.
Most people wouldn't know that though. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
How much less teams are willing to invest in a KBO player than an MPB player.
I was going to say, so Murakami's not coming over for a couple of years, but when Munetaka Murakami comes over, that's 150 guaranteed. Like,
yes.
That's the starting point.
Yes. And he's all on the bat. Like, you're not getting value anywhere else. He's stretched at third. He's probably first base DH, and he's got whiff concerns, generational type power out of Japan. And he's breaking records. But if he doesn't rake, you're a sunken 150 million. I look at 20 something million for a Ha-Sung Kim type.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I think we're going to start seeing more KBO prospects. One, come over, and two, make more money. And I'm interested to see kind of how this continues, because this is just the beginning, man. Japan wins the World Baseball Classic. Like, we're getting more exposure that way. Don't underestimate how antiquated some of these teams are in terms of how they approach international, signing. I promise you, just Japan winning on our big stage is probably opened the minds to some of the older executives and some of the folks that just remember back to, this guy that didn't pan out, and who was the Yankees guy who I forget, like, I'm pretty sure Steinbrenner called him like a fat lard, which was horrible, and then sadly it was a bust and ended up taking his own life. Like, it was one of the worst stories I've read. I caught up on this recently.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, horrible story. And I think there's like this negative connotation of like, we don't know. It's a mixed bag. We'll see what happens. It was the same thing with the Cuban players that would come over. I remember the conversation around Yoenis Cespedes was, can he hit a curveball? Like, it's like, oh, can the players who come from Cuba hit a curve? I'm like, that's like borderline, like that's borderline racist to say.
Borderline
like,
racist.
It's not, can they hit a curveball? It's, can they hit big league pitching, and we'll see. Like, it's interesting. I want to continue to have conversations about this. And as we get closer to free agency and more players getting posted, and I also wrote a really detailed piece on Roki Sasaki. If you want to look that up on justbaseball.com, look up Roki Sasaki. I broke down his arsenal and, why I think he can really play at the big league level. That's a guy that's going to make over 150 million. But yeah, just kind of wanted to end with a free flowing conversation about what the future is of, players coming over from Japan in the KBO. Cause I think this is just the beginning of a second wave. And I think a higher rate of players, not only coming over, but hitting, or like succeeding. And I think those two things will go hand in hand, because the more success, the more confidence, and also there's just more talent over there.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to split the difference here. I think 5 years for 60 is what Lee gets.
Do you think Ha-Sung Kim is inspired enough that like they're going to start to, pay?
I think so.
Money?
And I think the market that Lee is entering is just way larger than the market that Kim entered.
It's also not a great free agent class. Kim's free agent class. Like, I think they said, oh, we'll just go get another big leaguer who does exactly what you do. Yeah. So we'll give you, so let's see. I'm excited. I have no freaking clue, man. So I won't even pretend to know what the money's going to be.
Also,
with 5 straight gold gloves. And also won the MVP. So, I mean, that's going to play.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm fascinated by the deal too. Also, Hideki Irabu was the name.
That's what it is. Hideki Irabu. Really
Yeah,
sad story.
I just skimmed the story. That's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, came over, had a terrible work ethic, and that's why they were upset. Like, okay, you draft guys all the time that have terrible work ethics. Like, it's interesting, and it's funny. I think it's almost the other way around now when you see most of these players that are coming over that seem to have a better idea of professionalism than some of the guys that we see that come from situations where they're celebrated as the number one overall guy from the word go, and haven't earned nearly as much. Like, it's going to be fun to see more of these guys come over. So we'll be talking more about that. That'll do it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed our range of just crazy topics all over the place. We'll be doing a lot more of these kind of just like stream of consciousness, catch you up on what's going on in the baseball world episodes. But before that, we got a Davis Schneider interview that's going to come hand in hand with a top 100 update that will be out on Monday, the 14th. Very excited for that. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a rating. I'd love to see that get back up to 5 stars. I think we're at 4.8. Somebody didn't like us, so I'd really appreciate that. And if you could subscribe on YouTube, help us grow our channel, that would be great as well. That's it for this week. Looking forward to a loaded week next week. And until then, look forward to talking prospects with you next week. Have a great weekend.